Hello, YouTube. We just finished up Metaphor ReFantazio, and these are my thoughts. It took 81 hours for me to finish the game for a singular playthrough. I played on hard. I was also reading 90% of the dialogue that wasn't voiced. I would say the majority of the game is voiced. Anything social link wise between, if there's 8 stages to a social link, 2 to 7 are not voiced, 1 and 8 are voiced. So that's how they handled that. And mainly most of the main story is, every once in a while it kind of isn't voiced, but most of the main story is voiced. Anyways, we won't have any spoilers in this thoughts video. There will be no spoilers whatsoever. I'm not even going to show footage because I don't want to spoil stuff. I won't be talking about the characters by name or reference anything like that. So completely spoiler free, just my thoughts on the game thus far. We'll start with graphics. You know, it's a Persona game. They've never really led in the world of graphics. Where they do lead and where the game does have a strong synth, just like any of the other Persona games, because I do consider this to be, you know, of that ilk, being that it's made by Atlas and whatnot, is the UI and the art itself, which is where the game really shines. I think the UI, for some reason, doesn't, while it's very busy, it never is too busy, and it's always just a treat to look at. There's multiple different, like, character, I guess, portraits in a lot of the UI. If you're moving through the story or the different sections of the UI pretty quickly, it can be a little bit frantic, especially towards the later game when you're grinding. But yeah, I thought the UI was fantastic. I thought the art direction in the game was fantastic. I love the design of everything in the game as well. And performance-wise, you know, I played 4K. It was 300 FPS. It's not a, performance hog of a game. Graphics are pretty simple to discuss here. It does have anime, like CG style cutscenes throughout the game. I thought those were also fantastic. Even though I'm not a weeb and I don't like anime, I just watch One Piece. But I did like the animated sections of this game. But that doesn't make me a weeb. Gameplay wise, that's really where the bulk of this thoughts video will go to, I believe. Where do we begin? Mechanics and combat. You're going to be fighting a lot of things in this game. I would say it's about 60 to 40% combat to other tasks, social links and whatnot. I thought the combat in this game is fantastic. I thought the way that they handle, if you've played a Persona game, and even if you haven't, the way that they handle archetypes, which is what they call it in this game, is pretty awesome. Any character, while they have a tendency to align with a certain stat, or much later in the game, a certain archetype, you can pretty much be anything on anyone. The game does have benefits much, much later on if you want to try and get every archetype for every character. There is, a reason to do that if that's something that you're interested in. But I finished the game by throwing money at every person I fought. Like, literally just, I had 2 million gold and I would just throw money at everyone. And I beat the game by throwing money at everyone. And that's great. I like that a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. So I thought that the actual combat, it does have like the weakness stuff of scanning, enemies and finding their weaknesses and all that different stuff so that you can continue your turn order. And there's ways to increase your turn size in terms of different skills. There's also ways for the enemy to increase their turn length. I guess it really comes down to difficulty. I was playing on hard. If you want I think hard is a good way to play this game, but you do have to utilize a lot of the game's mechanics, because if you don't and you aren't constantly sneaking up on enemies in the overworld to attack them so that you enter into the combat with an advantage and they're ambushing you, you're gonna have a hard time. You're gonna get rocked a lot of times, because if they get that ambush, they will exploit it to their advantage, and they hit very hard. So good luck. But you can definitely just play on normal, and I think there's even a difficulty drop below that as well. So I thought hard was a great difficulty. There's one above that once you finish it called Regicide. I did not play on that, so I can't speak to it. You can't even unlock it until you finish the game. But for me, hard was good. I think most people can play on normal and have a perfectly fine time. I did do about probably in total 4 to 5 hours of just grinding in dungeons. Not because I had to, I don't feel, but I did that for kind of stream purposes, so that when I got into the bulk of the story, I didn't have any really difficult fights. I was over leveled, I would say, for the back half of the game for the most part. But you know, we were streaming the game, so that's a me thing. If you want to do that, you totally can. It's very easy to grind in this game. If you go to the dungeons, they make that very easy to do. So the game kind of expects it. And if you're wanting to unlock all of that stuff, you can, or you don't have to at all. And I thought that was great. Speaking to the classes and archetypes, I already said that, you know, it's awesome that a character can be anything they want. I really enjoyed just the swath of archetypes, really classes that are unlocked over this game. I think in total there are 40 classes across the entire 80 hours. I unlocked and used every single one, apart from one or two that I just wasn't super interested in rather. But yeah, they were all great. They all have a different look to them. They all have, you know, like a different theme to them. You're able to bring on passives from other classes / archetypes to whatever you're, you know, playing on your character, whatever archetype your character is. I loved mix and matching that stuff, and, you know, making the best debuffer, making the best healer, making the best fighter or mage or whatever. That stuff was cool. I really liked that a lot. Dungeon design. You know, I think if you've played a Persona game, they have these very like grandiose themed dungeons that you're going into. This game, maybe it does have like themed dungeons, and they kind of do mix it up every once in a while in terms of the main story. But design wise, they're definitely not as expressive, I guess is how I would say it, than something like Persona 5, which I do think, well, we'll get to it a little bit later, but for me, Persona 5 is a better game, but doesn't mean that this game's bad. I actually really enjoyed this game. But dungeons some of them are cut and paste. Some of the side content dungeons are reused 2-3 times, depending on what you're looking at there. Not that it's an annoyance or anything, but, you know, I think, I don't know how many main story dungeons there would be in this game. Probably a little more than 10. I don't know off the top of my head, but they're fine. They do mix it up in terms of the content and how the dungeon is structured. One dungeon in particular is extremely long. Some other dungeons are pretty short. It's fine. I thought I enjoyed that stuff. And I thought the pacing of all that stuff and the difficulty of all those were fine. There are some like clear difficulty jumps in terms of the main story. You'll be very aware of that when that occurs. It happens midway-ish through the game, I would say. It kind of bumps up, and then at the end of the game, it also bumps up again in terms of difficulty. But yeah, thought that was cool. Enemy design. There are a lot of enemies in this game that are reused and have kind of a color swap. I wasn't super annoyed by it, but if you're a person that wants to see a whole plethora of enemy designs out there, maybe it's going to be a little bit of a hindrance to you enjoying it, because they do reuse a lot of stuff. I already spoke on the grinding, but yeah, I grinded about 5 hours of content, which in some cases was me just kind of standing in place and hitting the button over and over and over and over while watching a Twitch stream. So I enjoyed that aspect. It didn't really matter to me. Let's talk about the audio, specifically the music in the game. I thought the music was fantastic. Obviously, if you're watching this, you've probably heard the chant fight music. I have somewhat of a hot take on this. I liked the chant / fight music for the first, this sounds funny, for the first 70 hours of the game. There is a dungeon towards the end of the game, this isn't a spoiler I don't think, where the monk music is the main music. And it completely ruined the monk music for me. I don't want to listen to it anymore. It's too much. It's in my head, and you're just it's everywhere. When you're getting that monk music is like a combat thing, and it's only in combat. It's fantastic. You're loving it. It's great. But then when you get out of the fight and the monk music is still there, it's a little bit of an annoyance. I loved all the other music in the game. I thought, the big ultimate fights in the game had fantastic sequences when it came to the music. I generally loved everything in the game. It's a very different music from Atlas, specifically to fit kind of the vibe of the game, where this is very medieval. If you think of like Persona, which is like pop, real life style stuff. This is very much fantastical driven, I guess, is how I would put that. But yeah, I thought the music was great. And again, the chanting stuff, I still like the battle music, but there's one particular dungeon that really just, I was pretty close to turning the music off in the game at that point. Voice acting. I thought the voice acting in this game and the dialogue that they said, while a lot of it is like, it's a metaphor, you idiot, bonk, and hits you on the head over and over and over, I thought the voice acting was very good. And I thought, I'll talk about it in the story stuff, but all of the characters were very well done. There are definitely some standouts within the game. I don't think that there's anything. There's also just like some clearly funny lines that characters say. And there's no, in Persona, if you've played any of the Persona games, there's not like the annoying side character, for example, in this game is not annoying, actually has a really cool story and a good voice, which is rare if you've played any of the other Persona games. And that kind of comes into maybe one of the bigger points of this video is the comparison to other Persona games. I've already done a good bit of that, but specifically I want to talk about things like the progression in this game. Some of those Persona games have a lot of filler, specifically when it comes to the social link stuff. In this game, anytime that you can actually go and talk with someone to continue the social link, it is a full level continuing that social link, and you will get benefits from that social link. It's not just, I'm going to go spend time with X character, time has passed, your relationship grew. It's, I'm going to go spend time with the character, we're going to advance their story a little bit further, and you're going to get some sort of reward out of it. I really liked that. I thought that was fantastic. That might have cut down on the overall playtime of the game, but I really enjoyed it. The idea that there's not really filler at all for any of these side characters. Whether any of that content is valuable or interesting, that's up to you to decide yourself. And maybe that will kind of fall into the filler bucket. But for me, it did not. Anytime I did side content, or rather social link content to advance that level, I enjoyed the stories for the most part. Even some more so than others is how I would put that. Time management. A lot of people see the calendar in this game and know the systems of Persona, and they get a little bit worried because they are freaking out about not having enough time to do everything. I finished the game and I had 8 days with absolutely nothing to do. In this game, they are very lenient on making sure that you have time to do everything you want to do. All my social links were maxed. I finished all of the side quests. I did all of the dungeons. I did the super boss that you can do in your first playthrough I did not do the New Game Plus Super Boss for those that are curious and have also already played the game. But yeah, I did everything you can do on a first playthrough, and I had 8 days at the end to do whatever I want. And so I went and took a bath and increased some stat points and things like that. But yeah, it's not as stressful as, say, like Persona. Definitely not Persona 4. Persona 5, I think, was lenient, and this is even more lenient. So if you're worried about the time management and you're stressing out about getting everything done, maybe don't go and wash your clothes for extra MP or do stuff like that. Focus on the social links when you can do them, because you're actually going to get beneficial effects on the gameplay when you do. Traversal. You can pretty much go anywhere in the world that you want to without spending too much time. You can travel to any of the main cities at any given time. You can go to any of the little side cities with a day spent. Traversal in this game is cool. I think the means of traversal is a little bit odd for those that have gotten there. It's a weird thing that you traverse in. But I guess I am saying that from a developer that turned a cat into a car. So maybe it's not all that weird. Anyways, I thought that was fine. And then I already talked about the social links where there's really no filler and all of that stuff. I really enjoyed those. And I loved all of the social links in general. We could talk about the story a little bit without spoiling anything. The characters in this game are fantastic. I will say, if you are wanting to play Metaphor, do not look up the character list. Play through the game for your first playthrough without knowing who is going to be a character in your party, because there were 4 to 5 times. I mean, the back half of the game, every single time someone joined my party, I was like, holy shit, they're going to join my party. This is fucking awesome. And I love that. So do not look up the character list in this game, and try not to watch any footage of like late game content so that you don't get your character spoiled, because the characters in this game were fantastic. I loved all of them, especially the characters that join you. The side characters were interesting. The villain, I guess, is because there is like a central villain in this game. The antagonist, let's go with that. Very well written. I'm hesitating because there were points where I was just kind of like, he's okay. He's all right. And I think, well, before I get into my thoughts on the actual overall story itself, I do want to talk about the pacing. This game's pacing, I've heard some like conflicting conversation around this. My take on the pacing is that it's actually paced very, very well from the get-go. It maybe takes like an hour or two to kind of build the world up and give you a little bit of the introduction. But I thought overall the characters in this game were fantastic, and the story overall was very well paced. Where I do think that there is a lot of room for conversation is comparison to Persona, which it's hard not to do that for everything in this game, being that the developers are from Atlas, the people that made the Persona series. In the Persona games, you have a story about the characters in the game. And sure, you can pull different things from that and different parallels to kind of, your existence and your own story in your life and everything. But for the most part, it's a story about those people. I think Metaphor is the same, but at the same time, and maybe it's because I played this around election time here in the US, but they don't ever say like, it's a metaphor, and then look at the camera, but they could have, and it would have fit the story completely, because they really do beat you over the head with all this stuff. I do think the game has a very good message, and it's a very like uplifting message when all is said and done. And it deals with some like, heavy content. That's not anything new for kind of Atlas and past games. They've dealt with some pretty heavy stuff. This game does deal with a lot of like racism and existing in a world where racism exists, and how do you deal with that, and how do you show different ways of that, and how do you overcome that, and all that different stuff. And that stuff did resonate well with me, but by the end of it, when it does what, you know, JRPGs tend to do, it didn't have that big moment for me. It didn't resonate that high with me when I finished the game. And I think that's probably where a lot of my criticism lies, just because it didn't hit for me. That's not to say where it didn't hit for other people. I've seen plenty of people talk about it where the story really resonated with them. And if it does, that's awesome. For me, it didn't, for whatever reason, which I'm sure there are multitudes of. So I thought the story was fine. I didn't think the story was, you know, 15 out of 10, best story, blah, 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 blah. I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. But did it affect me in the way that, like, Shadowbringers, for example, from Final Fantasy XIV, or even Endwalker from Final Fantasy XIV did? No, not really. A lot of that might have been tied to the music, but that's a whole nother conversation. So, yeah. All in all, if you've skipped to the end, in summation, should you play Metaphor? Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic game, especially if you like JRPGs, especially if you like Persona games. It's another banger of a Atlas game. Is it the end-all be-all of Game of the Year of 2024? For me, it will be in a top 10, but I don't think it's going to be near the top. I don't know what is at this point here as I record this on November the 1st, but it's not the easy game of the year for me that for a lot of people, I think it was. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I thought it was great, and it was time well spent. So definitely go check it out. It's a really interesting game. It's worth playing for sure. And the story, while it is a little bit heavy-handed, it is good. I don't want to leave you with me saying that the story is bad, because I did enjoy it, and I did enjoy my time with it. If you do want to watch the playthrough, the entire playthrough, I think in 15 or 14 parts, is available on YouTube here on the channel, so you can go check that out. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. If you have any comments, please do drop a comment down below and tell me how completely wrong I am. All right? Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. I'm out of here. Bye-bye.